In a world where privilege often dictates power, one woman's courage and determination would spark a chain of events that turned the tables in the most unexpected way. This is the story of Elena Hayes, a self-made billionaire whose unshakable resolve would redefine justice and fairness in a society where respect must be earned, not bought. But before we dive into this incredible tale of resilience and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Hit the like button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Now, let's begin. The Grand Hall in Boston was the epitome of elegance that evening, its high ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers and the air buzzing with the chatter of the city's most influential figures. Nathaniel Blake, the enigmatic billionaire, moved effortlessly through the crowd. Dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, his every gesture exuded power and confidence. By his side was Clarissa Hart, a stunning young actress who clung to his arm like an accessory, basking in the glow of his influence. Nathaniel had attended countless galas before, and tonight was no different. Another evening of networking, sipping champagne, and smiling at people he didn't care for. But as he scanned the room, a movement near the catering area caught his eye. A figure weaving through the sea of servers, balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres, stopped him in his tracks. It was Elena Monroe. He could barely believe it. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple bun, and she wore the standard black and white uniform of the serving staff. But it was undeniably her. Nathaniel's gaze dropped to her rounded belly, clearly visible beneath the fitted apron. Time seemed to freeze. His heart pounded in his chest as questions flooded his mind. Why was she here? Why was she working as a server? And more importantly, why was she pregnant? Before he could gather his thoughts, Elena glanced his way. Their eyes locked for a brief moment, hers wide with surprise and a flash of something he couldn't quite place. Anger? Fear? Or perhaps both? Without a word, she turned on her heel and disappeared through the staff entrance. Nathaniel barely noticed when Clarissa tugged at his arm, asking what was wrong. Ignoring her, he excused himself and followed Elena. He navigated through the bustling kitchen, ignoring the confused looks from the staff, until he found her in a dimly lit corridor near the service elevators. "Elena," he called, his voice low but firm. She froze, her back to him, before slowly turning around. Her expression was a mixture of defiance and weariness. "Nathaniel," she said, her tone cold. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" he echoed, his frustration mounting. "I want to know why my ex-wife is working here. And why?" He gestured toward her belly. "Why you're pregnant." Elena folded her arms protectively over her stomach. "It's none of your business," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It is my business if—" Nathaniel paused, the realization hitting him like a freight train. "Is it mine?" Elena didn't answer immediately. Her silence spoke volumes. When she finally nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears, Nathaniel felt his world tilt on its axis. Nathaniel leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself. His mind raced, replaying their divorce 2 years ago. The arguments, the accusations, and the bitterness that drove them apart. He had buried himself in work, telling himself it was for the best, that Elena would be better off without him. But now, seeing her like this, he couldn't ignore the nagging guilt gnawing at his chest. "How long have you been working here?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Since last year," Elena replied, her tone curt. "After the divorce, things weren't exactly easy for me. I had to make do." Nathaniel frowned. "Why didn't you reach out? You know I would have helped." "Helped?" Elena's voice rose, and she took a step closer, her eyes blazing. "Like you helped me when we were married? All your money and power, Nathaniel, and not once did you listen to me. Not once did you care about what I wanted. I didn't want your charity then, and I certainly don't want it now." "But this isn't just about you anymore," Nathaniel said, gesturing to her belly. "This is my child, too." Elena's shoulders sagged, the fire in her eyes dimming. "Do you really think you can just waltz back into my life and fix everything? It's not that simple, Nathaniel." "Then explain it to me," he said earnestly. "Tell me what happened. I deserve to know." Elena hesitated, her hand unconsciously resting on her stomach. "Not here," she said finally. "I need to get back to work before I lose this job. If you want answers, meet me tomorrow at the cafe on Willow Street, noon." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, leaving Nathaniel standing alone in the corridor, grappling with the weight of her words. The following morning, Nathaniel sat in his penthouse office, staring at the Boston skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He couldn't shake the image of Elena from his mind, her tired eyes, her defiant tone, and the way she had shielded her unborn child as if she didn't trust him. Driven by a need for answers, he called his private investigator, Robert Klein. "I need you to look into someone for me," Nathaniel said, his tone clipped. "Elena Monroe. I want to know everything. Where she's been, who she's been in contact with, and why she's struggling." "Consider it done," Robert replied, wasting no time. Meanwhile, Elena sat in her tiny apartment, the walls bare except for a few framed photographs of happier times. She stared at the eviction notice on her kitchen counter, feeling the weight of her circumstances pressing down on her. Nathaniel's sudden reappearance had stirred up emotions she thought she had buried long ago: anger, resentment, and a flicker of hope she didn't want to acknowledge. At noon, Nathaniel arrived at the cafe on Willow Street, his presence commanding as always. Elena was already there, sitting by the window with a steaming cup of tea in front of her. She looked up as he approached, her expression guarded. "Thank you for coming," Nathaniel began, taking a seat across from her. "I'm not here for pleasantries," Elena said, cutting to the chase. "You wanted answers, so ask your questions." Nathaniel didn't hold back. "Why didn't you tell me about the baby? Why didn't you ask for help?" Elena sighed, her gaze drifting to the bustling street outside. "Because I didn't trust you, Nathaniel. I still don't. You were so consumed by your work, your ambition, that there was no room for me in your life. I couldn't raise a child in that environment." Her words cut deep, but Nathaniel didn't argue. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. "I know I've made mistakes, Elena, but I want to be there for you, for our child. Just give me a chance to prove it." Elena hesitated, torn between her pride and the undeniable need for support. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but on my terms." Nathaniel agreed without hesitation, determined to make things right. As they left the cafe, neither of them noticed the man watching from across the street, a sinister smile playing on his lips. It was Victor Caldwell, Nathaniel's fiercest rival, who had been pulling the strings behind Elena's downfall. The arrangement between Nathaniel and Elena began the next day. Nathaniel, true to his word, insisted on supporting her in every way he could. Elena, though wary of his sudden involvement, reluctantly allowed him into her life, for the sake of their child. Nathaniel started small, offering to cover her rent to keep her from being evicted. Elena hesitated, but eventually accepted, realizing she had no choice if she wanted to stay afloat. He also arranged for her to see the best doctors in Boston, ensuring that both she and the baby received top-notch care. Despite his efforts, their interactions were anything but easy. Conversations were often tense, filled with unspoken resentment. One evening, as Nathaniel visited her apartment to drop off groceries, he noticed a pile of unopened bills on the kitchen counter. "You should have told me things were this bad," he said, his voice laced with frustration. "I didn't want your pity," Elena snapped, snatching the bills away. "It's not pity," Nathaniel shot back. "It's responsibility. Whether you like it or not, this is my child too." The argument fizzled into an uneasy silence. Nathaniel sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I know I can't undo the past, but I'm here now, Elena. Let me help." Elena didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the floor. She hated feeling vulnerable, but she couldn't deny the relief that came with his support. While Nathaniel focused on rebuilding trust with Elena, Victor Caldwell was busy laying the groundwork for his next move. For years, Victor had harbored a deep-seated hatred for Nathaniel, blaming him for the collapse of his once thriving company. Seeing Nathaniel's connection to Elena had given him the perfect opportunity for revenge. Victor's plan began with subtle sabotage. He bribed Elena's employer, ensuring she was assigned the most grueling shifts. He spread rumors among the staff, isolating her from her coworkers. And when Nathaniel's investigator, Robert, started digging into Elena's struggles, Victor fed him false leads, painting a picture of betrayal and deceit. Nathaniel, unaware of Victor's schemes, noticed the strain on Elena. She looked exhausted, her movements slower, her voice softer. One evening, as they sat in a cozy corner of her apartment, he finally asked, "Is something going on at work?" Elena hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. "It feels like someone's trying to push me out. But I can't afford to lose this job, Nathaniel. You shouldn't have to deal with this, Nathaniel said, his jaw tightening. I'll handle it. Despite her protests, Nathaniel called the catering company's manager the next morning, demanding an explanation. The manager stammered through excuses, but Nathaniel's instincts told him there was more to the story. Robert's investigation finally bore fruit a few days later. He met Nathaniel in his office, a thick folder in hand. Victor Caldwell is behind this, Robert announced, placing the folder on Nathaniel's desk. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Victor? Robert nodded grimly. He's been targeting Elena for months, bribing her employer, spreading false rumors, even intercepting some of the aid you tried to send her after the divorce. The revelation hit Nathaniel like a thunderbolt. Anger surged through him, but it was tempered by guilt. I should have seen this coming, he muttered. There's more, Robert said, flipping open the folder. Victor's not just trying to hurt Elena. He's using her to get to you. He's already leaked stories to the press, implying that you abandoned her and the baby. Nathaniel's fists clenched. Victor's vendetta had crossed the line. He wouldn't let this man destroy what little progress he'd made with Elena. Later that evening, Nathaniel confronted Elena. We need to talk, he said, his voice serious. Elena looked up from the book she was reading, sensing the tension in his tone. What's wrong? Victor Caldwell has been sabotaging you, at work and your personal life. He's trying to turn you against me. Elena's eyes widened. Victor? But why? Because he blames me for his failures, Nathaniel said bitterly. And now he's using you to get revenge. Elena sank into the couch, her mind racing. The pieces began to fall into place. The sudden hostility at work, the unexplained delays in her mail, the feeling of being watched. What do we do? She asked finally. We fight back, Nathaniel said firmly. But I need you to trust me, Elena. Completely. Elena hesitated, then nodded. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. Together, they might just stand a chance against the shadows threatening to engulf them. With the truth about Victor Caldwell now in the open, Nathaniel and Elena forged an uneasy partnership to confront the growing threat. Despite their fraught history, they recognized that their survival and the future of their child depended on working together. Nathaniel, ever the strategist, immediately mobilized his resources. His first step was fortifying Elena's life. He hired security to shadow her discreetly, ensuring Victor couldn't strike again unnoticed. He also brought in his legal team to investigate any contracts or transactions Victor might have tampered with. But the most crucial step was earning Elena's trust. Sitting in her modest living room one evening, Nathaniel laid out his plan. We need to cut off Victor's access to you, he began. That means finding out everyone he's bribed, everyone he's manipulated. Elena frowned, her hands nervously twisting a piece of paper. And then what? Even if we expose him, he'll just come at us another way. That's why we hit him where it hurts, Nathaniel said, his voice cold. His finances, his reputation, we dismantle everything he's built. Elena's stomach turned at the thought. She'd never been one for vengeance, but Victor's actions had left her with no choice. Fine, she said softly. But no more lies, Nathaniel. If we're doing this, we do it together. Agreed, he said, a rare warmth in his eyes. Their first move was subtle. Nathaniel instructed Robert to plant misinformation, leading Victor to believe that Elena was considering fleeing the country. The bait worked. Victor scrambled to tighten his grip, inadvertently revealing some of his hidden allies. Meanwhile, Elena returned to work with renewed determination. Knowing that Victor's sabotage was deliberate gave her the strength to push through the hostility. She began documenting every odd interaction, every whisper behind her back. Slowly but surely, she built a case against her tormentors. Victor Caldwell, unaware of Nathaniel and Elena's counteroffensive, grew increasingly bold. He ramped up his efforts, believing he was close to breaking them. But his overconfidence led to mistakes. One evening, as Elena sorted through her mail, she found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a typed letter threatening her to leave Nathaniel or face dire consequences. Though the words chilled her, Elena knew this was the break they needed. She immediately called Nathaniel, who arrived within the hour. He read the letter with a grim expression. This is Victor's work, no doubt about it, he said, his voice tight with anger. Can we use this? Elena asked, her hands trembling slightly. Nathaniel nodded. Absolutely. It's evidence of harassment. But more importantly, it's proof of his desperation. He's slipping. Elena felt a flicker of hope. For the first time, it seemed Victor might not be as invincible as he appeared. The next day, Nathaniel's legal team filed a restraining order against Victor, citing the letter and other evidence they'd gathered. The move caught Victor off guard, forcing him to divert his attention to defending himself. But Nathaniel wasn't done. He instructed Robert to dig deeper into Victor's financial dealings. It didn't take long to uncover a series of shady investments and questionable partnerships. Armed with this information, Nathaniel began quietly contacting Victor's associates, warning them of potential investigations. The cracks in Victor's empire widened. Business partners pulled out of deals and investors grew wary. For the first time in years, Victor found himself on the defensive. As the battle against Victor escalated, so did the tension between Nathaniel and Elena. Despite their shared goal, their vastly different approaches often led to conflict. One evening, as they reviewed the latest developments in Nathaniel's office, Elena snapped. "You can't just bulldoze your way through this, Nathaniel. Not everything can be solved with money and power." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, his expression cool. "And what do you suggest, Elena? That we ask Victor nicely to leave us alone?" "I'm saying there's more to this than revenge," Elena shot back. "We have to think about the long term, about the kind of world we're bringing our child into." Her words struck a nerve. Nathaniel looked away, his jaw tight. "You think I don't care about that?" he said quietly. "Everything I'm doing is for this child, for you." The vulnerability in his voice took Elena by surprise. For a moment, the walls between them softened. "I know," she said, her tone gentler. "But we can't lose ourselves in the process. Promise me, Nathaniel, that when this is over, we'll focus on what really matters." Nathaniel met her gaze, the weight of her words sinking in. "I promise." It was a fragile truce, but it gave them both the strength to keep going. Meanwhile, Victor, reeling from his mounting losses, began to realize he'd underestimated his opponents. His frustration boiled over during a meeting with his closest advisors. "They're turning everyone against me," he growled, slamming his fist on the table. "I won't let them win." But deep down, Victor knew he was running out of time. The empire he'd spent years building was crumbling, and the enemies he'd dismissed as powerless were proving to be formidable adversaries. The stage was set for the final confrontation, and neither side was prepared to back down. Victor Caldwell's growing desperation made him reckless, and Nathaniel and Elena capitalized on it. As Victor lashed out with hasty moves, his fragile empire teetered on collapse. But Nathaniel knew they couldn't rest yet. Victor was most dangerous when cornered. To land the final blow, Nathaniel devised a plan that required careful timing and a degree of personal risk. They would force Victor into an untenable position, exposing his crimes in the public eye and ensuring he couldn't recover. Elena had been documenting Victor's harassment for weeks, compiling evidence with Nathaniel's legal team. But Nathaniel had a trump card he hadn't yet revealed to her, a witness who could seal Victor's fate. Victor's former business partner, Harold Linwood. Harold had been Victor's right-hand man for years until a falling out left him bankrupt and vengeful. Nathaniel approached him with a deal, immunity from prosecution in exchange for testifying against Victor. After some hesitation, Harold agreed, knowing it was his only chance at redemption. Nathaniel arranged for Harold to give a sworn statement to law enforcement while simultaneously leaking news of Victor's financial misdeeds to the press. The combination of legal and public scrutiny was designed to overwhelm Victor, leaving him no room to maneuver. Meanwhile, Elena played a critical role in gathering additional proof of Victor's personal vendetta. She confronted the colleagues Victor had bribed to sabotage her at work, persuading them to come forward with their stories. Though some refused, others, guilt-ridden and fearful of legal repercussions, agreed to cooperate. The trap was nearly set, but it required one final push. Nathaniel arranged a press conference to present the evidence they'd gathered. He warned Elena that Victor might retaliate in a last-ditch effort to intimidate them. "He'll try to scare us," Nathaniel said, his voice firm, "but we can't back down now." Elena nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The stage was set, and the final confrontation loomed. The day of the press conference arrived, and tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Nathaniel stood before a sea of reporters, his expression composed but resolute. Elena watched from the sidelines, her heart pounding. Nathaniel began by detailing the allegations against Victor: harassment, bribery, financial fraud. He presented documents, recordings, and witness statements, each piece of evidence meticulously prepared. The press conference was a calculated spectacle, designed to destroy Victor's credibility. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. In addition to these crimes, Nathaniel said, his voice cutting through the room, Victor Caldwell has engaged in a targeted campaign of harassment against Elena Warren, the mother of my child. This ends today. The room erupted with questions, but Nathaniel raised a hand to silence them. Justice will prevail, he said firmly. Victor Caldwell will be held accountable. The broadcast sent shockwaves through the city. Victor, watching from his penthouse, flew into a rage. He ordered his lawyers to issue a statement denying the accusations. But the damage was done. Investors pulled their funds, board members resigned, and law enforcement launched an official investigation. Victor's final act of defiance came that evening. He arrived unannounced at Elena's apartment, his face twisted with anger. "You think this is over?" he hissed, stepping closer. "You've ruined me, but I'll make sure you regret it." Before Elena could respond, the door burst open. Nathaniel's security team, stationed nearby, subdued Victor within seconds. As they escorted him away, Elena felt a wave of relief. "It's over," Nathaniel said, stepping inside. "He won't hurt you again." Elena nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. For the first time in months, she felt safe. Nathaniel's presence, once a source of tension, now seemed to offer a sense of security she hadn't realized she needed. The battle was won, but they both knew their journey was far from over. As Nathaniel reached out to her, his expression softened, and for the first time, they both dared to believe that they could rebuild. Not just their lives, but the trust they'd lost long ago. With Victor in custody and his empire in ruins, the storm that had consumed their lives finally subsided. Elena and Nathaniel could begin to pick up the pieces and move forward. Elena returned to her career, now free from Victor's interference. Her reputation, once tarnished by his schemes, was restored as colleagues came forward to support her. She was promoted to a leadership position, a testament to her resilience and determination. Nathaniel, too, underwent a transformation. The ordeal had forced him to confront his own flaws, and he vowed to be a better partner and father. He sold off the remaining shares of his company tied to Victor's dealings and donated the proceeds to charity, a symbolic gesture of starting anew. Months later, Elena gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Nathaniel was by her side every step of the way, his once distant demeanor replaced by genuine warmth. As he held his son for the first time, he made a silent promise to protect and cherish his family. At the baby's naming ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family, Nathaniel raised a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "and to the strength it takes to build them." Elena smiled, her heart full. Their journey had been tumultuous, but it had brought them closer than they ever thought possible. As they looked to the future, they knew challenges would come. But together, they could face anything. The past had forged an unbreakable bond, and the life they were building was worth every hardship. For the first time in what felt like forever, Elena felt at peace. With Nathaniel by her side and their son in her arms, she finally felt like they were on the path to something beautiful, something that could withstand any storm. The echoes of Victor Caldwell's downfall rippled far and wide, but for Elena and Nathaniel, the most profound victory was reclaiming their lives. No longer haunted by fear or bound by the chains of manipulation, they could finally embrace a brighter future. Elena found strength she hadn't realized she possessed. She had faced betrayal, humiliation, and danger, but through it all, she remained unbroken. Her career flourished, her voice was heard, and she became an advocate for others who had suffered under systems of power and abuse. Nathaniel, once consumed by his relentless pursuit of success, discovered what truly mattered. His love for Elena and their son became his greatest motivation, reshaping his priorities and softening his once hardened heart. The family they built became a haven, a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and hope. Years later, as they sat in their sunlit garden watching their son laugh and play, Elena leaned into Nathaniel, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly. All the time, he replied, wrapping an arm around her. And I'm grateful for every step, even the hard ones. They led us here. Alina smiled, her gaze fixed on their child's joyful face. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined her. She was free, not just from Victor's shadow, but from the doubts and fears that had once held her back. Their journey had been marked by struggle, but it had also been a testament to the power of love, justice, and perseverance. Together, they had not just survived, they had thrived. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in hues of gold, Elena felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead was unwritten, but one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of a life they would cherish, one moment at a time. And with that, their story, born from chaos and adversity, became a legacy of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light could prevail. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Elena and Nathaniel's story, a tale of resilience, redemption, and the triumph of justice over adversity. Your time and attention mean the world to us, and we hope this story has inspired and moved you as much as it has us. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more content like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more powerful stories that resonate and inspire. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what part of this story touched you the most. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we can't wait to share more incredible stories with you. Until next time, take care and remember, every story has the power to change a life. See you in the next video.